Hi, I'm Dr. Joseph Lamb, and it's a Thursday, the third Thursday of the month. So, this is our Lunch and Learn from the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Center by Metagencis in Gig Harbor, Washington. And today, the topic is healthy aging in the modern world. So far, as part of the series kicked off in July, we've talked about what is functional medicine and why you need it. We've talked about an introduction to your genes, epigenetics, and nutrition in August. And today we're talking about healthy aging. The next topic next month is the topic of revisioning your story, parenthesis, or changing your behavior, parenthesis. So, and then we're diving into gut health and detoxification and cardiovascular health and women's health, blood sugar balances, mood, cognition. We'll cover all those topics as we work our way around again to kicking off what is functional medicine and why you need it in early July 2022. So thanks for being here with me today. Happy you could join us. Happy you're going to get a chance to watch this later on. So the operative ideas in this conversation, in this title, revolve around twofold. Number one, what is healthy aging? And number two, why do I have the qualifier modern world there? Why is this different? And I think that both of those are relevant to our theme. You know, it's kind of interesting when you talk about aging and what does it mean to be someone who is healthy aging? What, in my mind, what that means is not necessarily an anti-aging program, but instead what it means for me is more of a successful aging. We are all going to change over time. We're not going to keep the bodies that we had as 20-year-olds. We're not going to keep the bodies we had as 30 or 40-year-olds. We're going to have our 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, possibly 100, and for a very few of us, even more years. We're going to keep those bodies, and they're going to change, but hopefully they'll enable us to do everything that we want to do with those years that we have. You know, it's kind of interesting. Dan Buchner, in his book about healthy aging, he wrote a book called Blue Zone Living. And the blue zones were areas around the world, like Okinawa, like certain villages in rural Italy, like Loma Linda, California, some places in South America, additional places in Asia, places where people outlive the normal life expectancy. And you have a high number of nonagenarians and centenarians, meaning people who live into their 90s and people who live into their 100s. And the people who are successful and who do that most typically are the ones who have certain lifestyle features. They've eaten a generally healthy diet. They've minimized bad habits. They haven't been in very risky professions. They've exercised routinely. But more importantly, it seems they have the right attitudes about how to relate to people and how to communicate with people. They're part of a supportive community. And they have a life purpose. They kind of understand where they're going and what they want to be doing. The psychological pieces almost seem to outweigh the other pieces, but it's the exercise, it's the food plan, it's nutritional supplements, it's how much sleep we get, it's all of these features, kind of the modifiable lifestyle factors, which play a role in how successful we are at holding those goals and holding those ideas in front of us. But Dan Buettner pointed out that, we're seeing more and more people live into their 90s and live into their 100s. But more importantly, we're also seeing people kind of rectangularize what's called the survival curve. If you think about it over time from a function perspective, as we age, function decreases over time and trends downward. And as it trends downward, we're able to do less and less. There's more morbidity in our lives. There's more disability in our lives. But if we take care of ourselves, we can compress that disability into the final part of that curve, maybe a quicker decrease, but many more years of getting to do everything that we want to do. And the blue zone living, as papers have demonstrated by DeFries and I'm forgetting who the follow-up paper was by, but by DeFries have demonstrated, made the comment that this seems to be the case. And they proved it in the follow-up paper out of DeFries' lab 20 years later. And so it becomes, an opportunity to live differently. We're living longer on average. Our generation, my generation, and the generation behind me is, and the couple generations, right up until we get to the children born in the 2000s. It's expected that the children born between 2000 and 2010, according to an O'Shaughnessy paper that was in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2006, that generation is actually expected, because of obesity and diabetes, to live for a shorter period of time on average than their parents. And this is before there's any impact of the COVID numbers on generational expectations. So, the world is a changed place in that regard. And, we're living longer. Partly that's because we don't have, perinatal mortality. Children aren't dying and mothers aren't dying in childbirth. Children aren't dying as much during infancy. But indeed, more of us live longer, and more of us have better quality of lives. Except this is all beginning to change a little bit. We're facing more and more challenges, and a paper that came out in about 2009 by Crimmins suggested that though the promise is there of being able to do more, right? The promise of being able to live longer, live better, we really haven't fulfilled it for most people in our society. Harari, in his book Homo Deus, paints kind of a grim future where for a minority, we're going to have an expectation of much longer life. We're getting to the point where if you have enough money, if you're in that wealthy minority, we're almost reaching relative immortality. People may be able to live 200-300 years with basically the equivalent of technological changes like the bionic man, the $6 million man. We can make you better. We can make you stronger. We can make you faster. Technology's changing. The ability to impact our genes is changing. So we are looking at a future where a minority may live longer, but for most of us, to live right now, we're facing some of the challenges of living in the 21st century. We're in the middle of a pandemic, but beyond that, we're in the middle of a time of climate change. We're in a time of abuse of the environment has led to more plastics in the environment, more pesticides in the environment, heavy metals in the environment, herbicides in the environment, a whole group of things which contribute to us having more challenging lives. It's been interesting to note that, for example, kind of a change associated with aging, that little girls have been getting their periods earlier and earlier and earlier from the 1930s onward. Like in the 1930s, the average age was like 14 to 15 years. And by the 1950s, it had dropped to 13 to 14. And by the 90s, it had dropped to, 11 to 12. And now it's not unheard of to have children even under the age of 10 be having their menses. Originally, it was thought that this was due to better nutrition, but now we're beginning to raise the question of, is it related to increased fat stores and, obesity? And is it related to some of the artificial estrogens, the pesticides, and the plastics that are in our environment? And are they prematurely bringing girls to what's called menarche? Indeed, there have actually been reported pregnancies under the age of 10, which speaks not only to hormonal change, but to kind of gross societal change. And clearly, we need to address issues because children being pregnant at that age, it's horrific. Similarly, kind of as an example of the toxicity that's in our environment, is that male sperm counts have been dropping. If you compare sperm counts from the 1930s to sperm counts from the 1990s and the 2000s, you find a fairly substantial drop in sperm counts. Now, some of the critiques of this argument about decreased sperm counts say that the technology for doing the counts has changed and that data sets aren't comparable, that it's like comparing apples to oranges and doesn't lend itself well. Well, the technology is not that much different, and it probably have to be thought about that, instead of being apples and oranges, maybe it's like a red delicious apple and a Macintosh apple. So we're seeing significant, maybe as much as 50% reduction in sperm counts over the year. And so far, this has not gotten to be societal tragedy. It's not impacting our ability to reproduce as society, but it is impacting certain individuals. And, we've seen an increase in the numbers of heart disease. We've seen an increase in the amount of cancer. And these are some of the chronic diseases of aging, diabetes, hormonal declines. We'll have a whole session coming up in, I guess, women's health will be coming up, next spring, but there's a whole series that we actually have on Facebook Live and on the YouTube channel, Joseph Lamb, MD, about women's health. But, the reality of it is that, menopause, though it's a common occurrence for women, it's going to happen if you live long enough. Our ancestors didn't live long enough to have menopause. So we're now facing a condition that is a consequence of us living long enough and living differently, that women are getting to the point where they are having menopause. So the question becomes one of, with healthy aging, in a world where there's lots of challenges, what can you do about it? Well, one of the most important things to do about it is to sit back and decide what it is that you want to do with your life. What are your goals? What is it that you want to be doing? What's important, meaningful, and valuable to you? Like, what is it that brings you enjoyment? I frankly like to paddle my kayak. And, the summer's ending here in the Pacific Northwest, and I made a big push. And in about the last 3 weeks plus, I've paddled 70,000 meters in my kayak. So, I've had a lot of fun. It's been my exercise. It contributes to me feeling well, contributes a little bit to being tired and achy, but in a good way. But I've done it because I took the time to identify that that would be something that would bring me pleasure. Coupled with that, I try to eat. I, have a relaxation practice. We do all of these things to try to make us as healthy as we want to be so that we can do the things that we want to do. That's the first step. I think I'm a lot more active at 61 than I know my father was, for example. And I'm probably more fit because of that, stronger because of that. We all get to decide what's important to us, what we want to do, and then we should focus our plans around that. One of the things that helps that is recognizing that perhaps the American diet isn't everything that it should be. Certainly the standard American diet, kind of eating off the food pyramid or attempting to eat as good as the food pyramid recommendations from like the FDA and the CDC, the kind of food plan that's been recommended, when we fall short of it, leaves us with a lot of nutritional gaps. Even when we try to eat enough fruits and vegetables, one of the challenges we get into is whether or not there's going to be enough, of the trace elements. Is there enough selenium? Is there enough zinc? Is there enough copper? What is it that we're missing? And then similarly, the macronutrient content and how much salt there is in our food and the such like. And then it becomes an opportunity for us to start thinking about doing things a little bit differently in that regard. All of us have the opportunity for crafting the lives that we want to have. And, we should do the best we can to make part of that craft eating a good diet. And, speaking to a lifestyle educator like Chelsea Moore here in our office, all of those things are an important part. One thing that you frequently hear is that, you don't need to take nutritional supplements if you eat a good diet. But in work that we did here that Bob Lehrman led back in 2011, 2012, we studied one of the Metagencis multivitamin combinations. It was called Phytomulti. And it was called that because it had a lot of plant extracts in it, which would work as antioxidants. And we demonstrated antioxidant properties in the test tube. We demonstrated it in a cell model that showed that damage to cells that had been pre-treated with the antioxidant combination of herbs reduced the damage that could be done through an oxidizing agent like hydrogen peroxide, so reduced DNA damage. And then finally, we demonstrated that in humans eating the product for 4 weeks or consuming the multivitamin for 4 weeks while eating the standard American diet, that was limited in the number of vegetables that they would eat a day, actually had improvements in their antioxidant potential. So oxidized LDL is probably considered the worst, or it's considered the best biomarker for predicting the development of heart disease. So having an elevated oxidized LDL is kind of like having the worst marker that we can measure. LDL is the lipoprotein carrier for cholesterol. It's the one we've traditionally called bad cholesterol, even though it's the bad carrier protein. All cholesterol, whether it's HDL or LDL, has the same structure. LDL has important functions, but we call it bad because it is lazy and leaves cholesterol where it shouldn't, and which includes in the vessel wall, and it's the small dense particles which get oxidized, which basically oxidation in a fat is a rancid fat. When it gets that way and gets left in the blood vessel of someone, then you've got the potential there for increasing atherosclerosis, the development of heart disease. So if you can reduce that oxidized LDL, and we demonstrated like a 12 to 15% reduction in LDL, oxidized LDL in people who were healthy, starting at a normal range, eating a healthy diet. So taking a good quality multiple vitamin can help. Making sure that we get enough fish oil, making sure that we're not getting toxins, making sure that we eat diets that aren't pro-inflammatory, making sure that, like, if we're getting fish, that we aren't getting a lot of mercury with it or cadmium. Looking at all of these components makes a big difference in terms of that healthy aging. Unhealthy aging, also called inflammation or inflammaging, like combining the word inflammation with aging, is really a consequence of the signals that lead us to be into trouble. We don't know about the impacts of, cellular technologies, and we don't know how that's affecting our immune systems, and we don't know how it's affecting our sleep and all of that. There are a lot of pieces that are unanswered, but if we address them, we can look towards making ourselves do better in the long run. Get to the place where we become the ones who drive our lives, we become the ones who set the goals. And so a full assessment of labs, looking at endothelial function, looking at the microbiome, looking at genomics, kind of looking at the DNA. These are all things that we can do. And then making behavioral change that's kind of important in achieving our goals. Because if we can't get our behaviors to change, no matter how much information we have, it's not going to lead to a lot of success. And that's why we have our Healthy Transformation Program here at the PLMC, and that's why the Consilience Partnership, Michael Stone, Monique Klass, Susan Buell, and Courtney Suter and I have been doing the courses that we've been doing. So I hope you all found this enjoyable. There's a couple videos that you may enjoy about behavioral change on the website. There's the opportunity to come here to the Functional Medicine Research Center, to the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Center. sitting in the same room where I used to sit sometimes throws me off name-wise. But it's the Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Center. Our telephone number is 253-853-7233, and ask for Brianne or Kristen, and they'll get you scheduled. Or you can see another functional medicine practitioner like Monique's in Connecticut with her partner in crime there, Joel Evans. They're at the Center for Functional Medicine in Stamford. Michael Stone is kind of finishing up his practice, but he's down in Ashland, Oregon, and there are lots of other good practitioners around. I've enjoyed talking with you today. I hope there will be opportunities for us to work together on your health, and I will be back next month with the topic of revisioning your story or changing your behavior. Thank you, everybody. Take care.